Doki Doki Literature Club, the game that looks like a standard anime dating sim, but is actually hiding one of the most interesting and unique psychological horror games on the market. But I'm not here to talk about the merits of this game. Well, not entirely. No, I have a small theory I've been sitting on for a while, and I'm excited to share this one with you. So this is the part in the video where I would usually give a spoiler warning, but I want to give a double warning for today's video. Not only will I be giving major plot and mechanic spoilers for the base game, but Doki Doki Plus is coming out at the end of the month, and while that version will add to the main story, the basic story will remain the same, so spoilers for that version too. In fact, if you haven't gotten around to playing Doki Doki yet, this could be a good opportunity to do so. But with that out of the way, today I want to talk about Monika. Just Monika. You see, Monika ends up becoming the main antagonist of the game. We'll come on to that shortly, but Monika is one of the most interesting video game antagonists I have ever encountered. She's not necessarily evil, but she does have a dark plan for the player in Doki Doki. That's right, not the protagonist, the player. Not only that, but I think Monika had a game plan all along, a game plan that won. So before we explore how Monika could have won, we first have to establish what exactly is her goal. In Doki Doki Literature Club, you the player are dropped into what appears to be a pretty standard anime dating sim. I mean, I assume this is what a standard anime dating sim is like. Listen, I'm not a fan of visual novels, okay? I like my video games to have, well, gameplay. But over the course of the game, you get the opportunity to spend time with, and romance, one of three girls. Sayori, the girl next door and your best friend, Yuri, the dark and intellectual but broody type, or Natsuki, the feisty short-tempered but cute one. You choose which girl you'll pursue by writing poems for the literature club. That's how all the characters are brought together in the first place. Sayori drags you along, reluctantly, might I add, to her after-school club, and this forms the basis of the majority of the game. Each character writes poems, and the group regularly shares them with each other. This is also how you spend time with the other characters. Enter Monika. She's the president of the literature club, and is described as being incredibly popular at the school. Despite being just as eligible for romance as the other characters, if not more, there is no option in the base game to romance Monika at all, a fact she is painfully aware of. But as the game progresses, you start to notice some weird things going on, mainly through the poems that the other characters write. Over time, the game becomes stranger and more terrifying, even leading to the deaths of certain characters depending on your choices. Eventually, it's revealed that Monika has been conscious all along. She knows that she's a video game character, and is jealous that she never gets a happy ending. All she wants is to spend time with you, not the protagonist, the player. She wants to romance you. It's almost like you got more than you bargained for with this dating sim, am I right? It's a very poignant story. The one girl in this game that can never be chosen wants nothing more than you to choose her. So much so that she tries to edit the game files to make the other girls unlikable, and when that doesn't work, she even starts to try and remove them from the equation entirely. An even better villain than Thanos. In fact, some of the dialogue when you talk directly to Monika explains how Monika is really struggling with an existential crisis. Monika states she would have deleted herself if the player had not showed up. This shows how she's struggling with her own existence, knowing she's not real and knowing that nothing she does matters. This explains part of her obsession with you, the player. There is also a very interesting line in this segment of dialogue too. I mean, if you were forced to abandon everything in your life and spend your eternity with a few game characters. This could be hinting at something else entirely about Monika's origins, but I'm going to keep that one for another video for now. So now we've established what Monika wants, how exactly could she win? Or should I say, how exactly did she win? Monika is self-aware. She knows she's a video game character, and while she doesn't fully understand how the human world and video games work together, she does seem to have a limited consciousness. For example, she knows when the game is turned off, and she also knows that the protagonist and the player are separate entities. This is the first key part to her victory. This meta-narrative plays a huge part in how I believe Monika wins. Monika knows that the game world and our world are separate. She even states as much. She admits that she knows the other characters in the game are not real, though she also states that she viewed them as her friends. So I think it's fair to say that she's aware she isn't real too. In fact, Monika's desperation for the player to spend time with her probably comes from the fact that Monika has been self-aware from the start. It's implied that this self-awareness comes from being the president of the club, and we also see that Sayori gains some of this self-awareness when she becomes the president of Literature Club as well. Imagine being part of a video game and knowing that fact, that you only exist when the game is running and that you have no greater purpose in life. You exist only as code, and you are bound by the rules of the extremely limited world you live in. Monika is limited to the scene she is in. She even notes that she is upset she doesn't have any scenes outside of the club, as she states she is jealous she doesn't have any cute outfits to wear for you. Monika has no opportunity to escape the boundaries set by the game code. The only opportunity she has is when the player loads up the game. No wonder she's so desperate for your attention. But Monika actually uses this to her advantage. By the end of the game, Monika will have removed all of the other characters from the game one way or another. At this point, your only option as the player is to spend time with her or delete her, which will cause her to end the game by removing herself from it. You as the player are left with two choices: let the game forever be in a limbo state with only you and Monika, or delete her and leave the game unplayable. In fact, the only way to play the game after it ends is to reinstall it from fresh. Which also brings back Monika. Sure, at this point it feels like a standoff. There is no game without Monika, and without Monika, there is no game. A subtle victory on Monika's end. She will lose all memory of this and will have to start again, but she gets another chance to spend time with you. So, a petty victory, but a victory nonetheless. But this isn't Monika's complete victory. Oh no, not even close. Monika's true victory comes once again from the meta-narrative of Doki Doki. Remember how I said that Monika is aware of how she isn't real? That her biggest wish is to be your love interest? Well, in a very subtle way, Monika will win every single time. It's pretty obvious, but Monika can never truly be with the player. After all, you are real, hopefully, and Monika is not. This is where Monika really does win in the end. Monika was written to be a side character, an NPC, a background actor on the stage of performances. But by the end of the game, Monika is the one character you remember. Her self-awareness that causes her so much pain allows her to break the fourth wall and talk directly to you, the player. It's almost similar to what makes Deadpool such a popular Marvel character. This fourth wall breaking character becomes so unique and so interesting that you never truly forget her. Her biggest restriction, her biggest weakness, her inability to truly be with the player is what causes her the most pain, but is also what gives her the edge. By talking directly to the player and not the game protagonist, by forcing the player to delete her character file to beat the game, by using information found on your PC, Monika does something that very few game characters can do. She gets in your head. The relationship you form with Monika is a far more meaningful one than you will ever form with most NPCs in a video game. Whether you love her or hate her, Monika forms a lasting impression. Not only that, but by speaking to you directly, she does what the vast majority of video game characters cannot. This is how Monika truly wins in the end. This is the ultimate victory for a video game NPC. To be remembered. But not only remembered, Monika forms a very rare type of bond, one that I don't know of any other characters from a video game that can. While most video game characters are forming bonds or relationships with your playable character, and there is definitely room for a conversation about agency with the characters you play, they can never reach the same level of connection as Monika does. No, in the end, Doki Doki is up there with legendary games such as BioShock or TV shows like Black Mirror. These are stories that truly stand out due to their meta-narratives or their exploration of the darker side of technology. Say what you want about the horror in Doki Doki, and some of it is truly messed up, but the real horror is in Monika's suffering. The idea of being aware that you are forever trapped in a video game is something truly horrifying. And after playing through Doki Doki several times, realizing that the other characters are just code, Monika is the one who is truly afraid here. This is basically one of the plot lines for an episode of Black Mirror. Somebody realizes they are forever trapped inside a video game, and while they don't really exist, it's still scary to them. In fact, it's terrifying, and this was one of the most shocking and disturbing episodes of Black Mirror to me, because of the idea of this realization that you will never be able to leave because you are only code, just really gets under my skin. As we said earlier, Monika knows she doesn't exist in our world, but by leaving this everlasting impression, she gets about as close as she ever could. You could almost argue that Monika is the most real character from any video game. Not because she has the most realistic graphics, not because she's the most relatable, but because she is the only character to talk to you directly like she is real. This is further reinforced by the ending of the game. Monika's song for the player is the only part of the game that is fully voice acted. For a game that is hours and hours of just text, leaving this at the end of the game just further cements Monika in your mind. And we could go back through the game and look at how many hints Monika was giving to you that she wanted your attention. So that's my theory. Monika wins by being the most memorable NPC of any video game I have ever played. There are very few games that stay in my head like this, Little Nightmares being one, but whatever your opinion of the characters and mechanics of this game, you have to admit that once you play Doki Doki, you never truly forget Monika. Just Monika. Just Monika. Thank you very much for watching, and if you have made it all the way to this part of the video, thank you for being awesome. I'm sorry the theories have been slow lately, I promise I am working on it. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you next time.